Hey everybody, this is Scott Roller. I'm here to present my session on model-driven apps are cool, and I will prove it to you. And actually, I have two welcome slides. I couldn't figure out which one I liked better, but yeah. So here's my name. I'm an independent consultant, and the name of my company is 365 Thoughts LLC, and my blog name is the same, which I'll get to here on my personal description page. But let's first of all start off with thanking our sponsors. Scottish Summit wouldn't be possible without the sponsors that are, come in and sponsor all the activities and give money for this to be a thing for the community. So love all these sponsors and thank them for being a part of this summit. All right, so this is who I am. I am a solution architect. I'm an independent consultant, and for D365 and the Power Platform. So basically, I'm a functional architect. I do anything but code. So I do a little bit of JavaScripting and some light coding. But really, when it comes down to anything like .NET or any of the higher end coding, I get a developer involved, and I think that's a good way to go. I like staying kind of a little bit on the higher end level and communicating with the business and gathering their requirements, and then bringing that back to the team and guiding the team through the solution. So that's kind of the where I focus my how I do business. Um, so I am very community focused. Love being part of the community here in the United States, but I love traveling abroad and going outside the United States. So a lot of people have seen me in some of the European conferences and summits like Scottish Summit. And a couple of years ago, I was in Glasgow. I'm not able to attend this Scottish Summit in person for different reasons. Basically, income and things this year just weren't there to make the trip. But anyway, I love being there, and you'll probably see me in the future at other events. I was in Copenhagen last year for the Nordic Summit. So kind of my tagline, or one of the things I believe in, is that happiness is everything. If we're not happy in life, then it's probably not worth doing. So, overworking and things like that. I'm trying to try to keep things even. And one of the reasons also behind being community focused is staying happy and being involved with the community. So that's really important to me. So some of the abilities, or some of the ways that you can get in touch with me, is on LinkedIn. I'm Scott J. Roller on LinkedIn. On my blog is 365-thoughts.com. On Twitter, or X, I guess now, it's at Gishsteel. And then my email address is sroller@365-thoughts.com. So feel free to reach out to me. I love interacting with people and, responding, sending back, letting everybody know what my thoughts are. If you have some opinions or something to talk about, I'd be happy to hear from you. All right, so let's jump right into it. We're here to talk about model-driven apps, and really, primarily, I want to focus on Power Apps outside of Dynamics 365. We'll talk about Dynamics 365 a little bit, and primarily because that's where this technology and the discussion kind of originated back in the day, where it was CRM, and we're developing these CRM or even XRM, which we'll get to in a second, applications. And that's where I'm wanting to focus today, though, is just in the Power Apps, why they're cool, how we can develop a brand new Power App inside of model-driven apps to fulfill a need. So I'm going to start with the licensing costs. And one of the biggest reasons why we should use Power Apps outside of the first-party apps, the per app license is only $5 per user per month. So we can get a one app, develop one app, and a user can use it for just $5 per month. And but then if you have problem, as the math shows, more than 4 apps that you're wanting a user to access, then we can upgrade to that premium license, which is $20 per user per month. But that allows you to have access to unlimited apps. So if you have a whole bunch of apps that you're developing as a company and you want your users to have access to them, then that premium license is for you. It's still very inexpensive and allows you to have access to any of the apps that you want. So one of the things that we get with with the Power Apps and Power Platform is the ability to get the out of the box entities that come with Dataverse. Things like accounts and contacts and activities. Um, so these are pre-built by Microsoft. A lot of the fields and forms and views and things are already there that you can tweak and change, but we don't have to really create from scratch a whole new account entity or a whole new contact entity or activities or a lot of other different entities as well. But those are the big three that I see that are used over and over again. So just kind of as a baseline, accounts are companies generally that you are working with, and then contacts are the individuals that may be a part of that account and could be related to that account. And then the activities are things like email and phone calls and anything else that you would tasks and things like that you would activities that would happen that are generally then related to accounts and contacts and different other entities that we might build in the Power App. And then in contrast with D365, the first party apps, they're a little more expensive. And that's one of the reasons why, unless you need one, and I love them because I work in them all the time. And I use, I'm a D365 consultant from the beginning. But if you don't really need all that first party information, things about, sales and customer service, marketing or field service, then paying that extra price for the first party apps, just isn't worth it. The sales module itself can run anywhere from $65 all the way up to $162 per user per month. I mean, you're getting a lot of good pre-built functionality with that. So, things that Microsoft has built for us that has been, engineered and really thought about. So it's valuable if you need it. But if we're going to create something, from scratch, that's kind of our own application, then I still think that Power Apps license is the way to go. So when we talk about those first party apps, though, we do get access to some restricted entities. The out of the box entities that I mentioned before, accounts, contacts, and activities, yeah, we can get those as well. But the restricted entities are purpose built for these different scenarios. Like we could have cases that are for customer service, or we could have goals that are sales related. And we could have journeys that are very marketing related. And we have work orders that are field service related. And we don't get access to those outside of the first party apps. So when you're paying that premium price, yeah, you get some additional functionality, restricted entities. There's also, some business processes that are built in there. A lot of, maybe some .NET plugins and things like that are doing some of the heavy lifting for you and really driving those processes. But yeah, if we don't need it, then we shouldn't pay the extra price. And we're going to talk about just those Power Apps today, really. All right, so let's move on. And as I mentioned before, XRM. So XRM is a little bit of an older term, but I still like using it. Really, it's CRM stands for Customer Relationship Management. So XRM is really anything relationship management, and it falls nicely into that Power Apps, model-driven app kind of scenario. So a couple of the Power Apps that I've developed recently within the last year. Some examples just to kind of give you an example of what can be done or kind of get, imagination going is, there was a truck driver history. So I guess in Europe they're called lorries, but over here they're just big trucks, they go down the highway and deliver goods and things to different places. And so I was working with a trucking company, and they were wanting to keep track of their drivers, either their current drivers, but also the drivers that they've had in the past, to see if they've had any accidents or drug history or anything like that, just to keep track of who they were, if they wanted to hire them again, or for their current drivers, how well they're doing, and maybe should they let them should they let them go because they're a safety risk. And it was all really safety driven on how safe are these drivers, are they good employees, things like that. And so that was an interesting little app that we developed, and had some custom entities about safety and trucks and things like that. There was another one that we developed, that I was a big part of, for railroad maintenance. So there was a company that was involved with creating, manufacturing equipment, for railroad crossings, all of the crossing guards and the lights and everything else. But they also then were contracted with the federal U.S. government to go out and maintain and check on these crossings. And so on a monthly basis, they had to go out and make sure that the crossings were still safe, that all the lights were working, that all of the sensors were there, and everything was working. If there was any kind of vandalism, or maybe an accident where a car ran into a piece of equipment, then they'd have to go out and repair that and make sure that everything was working again. And that was very interesting, once again, in a safety way. But we were tracking, the locations of the crossings, and the history of the crossings, what's happened in the past. And then, we were tracking, on a regular cadence, the monthly and the quarterly and the yearly maintenance schedule. But then also, if there was call in, in between that something needed to be done, then that was being, processed and sent out to the field to work on. So sort of a field service type of scenario, but less heavy. And we were able to get away with just having the basic Power Apps license and not going full field service on that. And then the last one, we were working with a gunpowder company, and they would manufacture gunpowder for the U.S. government, but also for individuals over here for hunting situations, and they would manufacture the powder. But what I learned through that process is that the powder is not always the same quality. It's hard to have a consistent quality out of the factory. So then they would go in and they would load up ammunition and fire it, and make sure that everything was had the right pressures and velocities and all that, all those things that you would attribute to ammunition and guns, and making sure everything was safe, so that it wasn't too much pressure and was blowing up guns, or wasn't low pressure and it was providing the right quality. So it was all quality tracking. It was keeping track of their quality checks and the stats that go into that. And then they would also have a history of the different formulations of the powder. And, did they get a good form? Are they consistently providing a good quality over time? Or is there inconsistencies where they may need to change their manufacturing process? So I think some of the things that are some of the big items here that lead into why we would want to use Power Apps and model-driven apps is just the quick design and the deploy of new apps. So it's built on top of the Microsoft Dataverse. So we get a lot of really nice pre-built items there. We're not really creating from scratch a Canvas app, but we have that structure of a form and a list view and the fields, and being able to put them on the form and design it that way. And we'll get that here in a second, where I'll have a demo of how that looks and feels after I get done talking about it here in a few minutes. But and as I mentioned before, this is all built on the Dataverse. So this is in the cloud, sort of similar to SQL in the cloud, but there are some differences. We do get those out of the box entities that I mentioned before. Things like accounts, contacts, and activities. We can build custom entities, as many really as we need. So on some of those examples before, we had a truck history, a truck entity, and we had some safety entities. We had some railroad maintenance entities, about the location and some of the equipment items that were needed there. So we can just create the custom entities as needed that are different containers or tables for that data. And then all the fields and columns that are needed inside of those tables can be created as well. And then we have those relationships, and I kind of alluded to some of those before when I was talking about the examples uh, of some of the apps that I built. But the many to one relationships and many to many relationships, so we could have maybe one account that then has many contacts, or we could have one driver that's maybe been associated with many different trucks, things like that, or even one railroad crossing that's had many different maintenance activities scheduled against it. So those would be kind of scenarios where those relationships would be used. And then one of the things that I really like, especially being a more of a functional, uh, uh, architect and consultant, is the low code, no code type of approach to all of this. We can generally get most of this done without a lot of code, and that's nice, because then you can have that citizen development type of scenario, or a lot of maybe not true citizens, but a more of a functional person doing a lot of this development, and then calling in maybe a true coder in the end if there's some advanced functionality that you're needing, or you're needing some help with JavaScript or something like that. But the no code really focuses on business rules and Power Automate, I think. So business rules are things like hiding fields, changing their status, making them visible or not visible, depending on different scenarios. And really, if a toggle is switched over, then maybe we display a few more fields based on that toggle. And maybe we unlock a field if something is answered in a certain way, but it's locked in every other situation. And so we can accomplish those things with business rules, and we don't need to really write true JavaScript or .NET to make those things happen. And then Power Automate is our Power Platform, uh, you know, uh, workflow tool that we're able to create based on triggers, different workflows. And those can be quite complex if we need them to be, branching logic. And really, it is just a lot of logic. It's based on a trigger happening. Maybe it's a timer, or maybe it's an event that's happened, a changing of a certain value that then triggers a process to send out an email or change some other field values, or send a create a task within the system. Once again, a task would be one of those activities that's now the box that's being sent to a user to remind them, hey, this happened, so now this task needs to happen. So Power Automate can be a lot of different things, and that could be a whole nother discussion of it in and of itself. And I'm sure somebody or multiple people at Scottish Summit are going to be talking about Power Automate. So very, very important tool there. Okay, so let's move on a little bit here, and let's talk about no code, low code, and pro code. So as I just got done mentioning, the no code kind of centers on the business rules and the Power Automate. We can create both of those kind of through point and click tools that we have in both Power Apps for the business rules, and then Power Automate for our Power Automate flows. And as I said, a lot of that is kind of point and click, choose what you want it to do, and the system just kind of writes that code for us in the background. So really, that's what we're doing, is where without having to write the code, we're telling the system what code we want to have written. A lot of those business rules end up being JavaScript type of code, but we don't, we would never see it. It's just we're directing it through the point and click on the screen. And then kind of in the low code, the next step up is with Power FX, Power BI, and JavaScript. So within Power Automate, a lot of times we're going to need some more advanced logic, some if-then statements, maybe a case statement, finding values that are in Dataverse based on, repeatable, variables and different things like that. So we would use Power FX for that. And we'll look at it here also in another few minutes during my demo. But a lot of times we can use Copilot to help us write those Power FX statements. But it is the next step up. We do need to know a little bit about writing statements, and a little bit. It's kind of a low end coding feature for writing those Power FX statements. And then Power BI can get into being maybe a little more pro code. I'm not the strongest with data, so normally I get more of a data expert to help me with the Power BI, especially with writing the queries and maybe having a data scientist that is involved with Power BI. But with the visuals and changing some of the dashboards and things like that, I dive right in and I'm a part of that. And that's really what I'm considering, some of that low code stuff, where we're changing some of the queries, and we're definitely changing the visuals and what they're how they're being displayed, and the filters and things there. And then JavaScript is kind of on the edge of low code going on to pro code. But generally when I'm using JavaScript, I'm finding examples out there on the internet. Somebody's already written something that I know is what I want to do, and so I'm just able to, get a little snippet of JavaScript, change it for my needs, and drop it into the Power App. And it's generally kind of a more of a low code, simpler situation. And I'm myself, I'm pretty much comfortable up to that point. And then we get into pro code. And this is, once again, this is my opinion. Maybe other people have a different opinion on what delineates low code, no code, low code, and pro code. But in my opinion, pro code then starts with the .NET plugins. So being able to write a whole plugin from scratch and then deploy that into the Power App. And a lot of times those .NET plugins are doing some advanced, integration, or touching another system, or just doing, something a little more advanced logic and interaction that we can't accomplish with the low code or the no code. And and like I said, I usually get a developer involved when that happens, and when that's been identified and something that I need from an architect standpoint. Okay, so right before we go in and start talking about the demo, I did want to talk about the release planner, and I'm going to show this in a few minutes as well. But this is, if you're not aware of this, I think most people are, but if you're not, you should become aware of it. It's a releaseplans.microsoft.com. And this is where all of the information is released, what they're coming up with in the future, what they've released maybe in the recent past, things you should be looking forward to. This is also where, honestly, I get a lot of my ideas on things to talk about and the upcoming technology. So a big part of that is Copilot, obviously, and most people have heard of this. It's the AI tool that is starting to be embedded in pretty much everything that's Microsoft. So a lot of it is just natural language. It's natural language everything. It's the ability, once again, to go low code and be able to ask Copilot how to build something. So we can build apps, and we can build Power Automate flows, and a lot of different things, which is natural language, just telling Copilot what you want it to do. And then it goes out and builds it for you. And a lot of times in my experience, I'm sure it'll get better, but it gets about 80% of the way there. And then you have a nice kind of template to work off of, and then you can make tweaks and changes to get your apps and flow and different other items that you've used Copilot for to the finished product. A couple other things that have been released recently but are very cool is the Microsoft Fluent Design. So they've redesigned the model-driven apps to have a more fluent design that matches a lot of the other Microsoft technologies that are out there. Things like Outlook or Word, or and just in general, like the first-party apps. They want everything to have the same look and feel, which they're calling fluent design. And so that's happened recently. And you'll see at the top of the menu bar, there's a toggle that naturally just is toggled on that you can turn off. But I would say leave it on, which is the new look. And eventually, I'm sure they'll get rid of that toggle when people are used to it, and it'll just be the new look, and that'll be that fluent design. And then this is exciting as well. The last bullet that I have up here, which is the model-driven apps use a monthly channel. So when updates are happening, generally there's a twice a year release wave 1 and release wave 2 for a lot of dynamics and other releases that are out there. Well, model-driven apps are going to get a monthly release. So more often we're going to get these model-driven app updates, and so we may get less at a time, or probably will, but they're going to happen more often, and that's kind of exciting that we'll get those releases on a monthly cadence. All right, so time for the demo, and so let's check out my developer instance of Power Platform. I'm going to get out of this PowerPoint presentation. I'm going to get into my developer instance that I was talking about before. Oh, and before I do that, though, I did want to hit and talk about and show the release planner. So out here in the release planner, there's a couple different sections. There's one for Dynamics 365 and the first-party apps, and a lot of the things that are going to happen there. So if I drill down on sales, now we get information about sales, about what is planned, what's coming up, what's try now. So there's obviously a lot of Copilot things out here, talking about AI-generated opportunity summaries and things like that for sales. But then more of what we're talking about today is in the pure Power Apps, Power Platform Power Apps world. And so Power Apps, let's see what's planned for Power Apps right now. Building modern apps. So this is what we're talking about as well. We can work together in real time to create Canvas apps, or we can modernize the maker experience with security settings. So these are all things that are try now items and things that are coming up with being planned. And things like Copilot. So we can review column suggestions with Copilot in model-driven apps. These are all things that are come out. This is where you should go out and get a lot of the new information and see what's coming up, so that you're on top of things and you know what to expect coming down the line. And also, a lot of times when you're online in an online environment, you can push off updates, but you're going to need to take those updates eventually, so you can see what's going to come in those updates ahead of time before you're just kind of blindsided with it or surprised with what's come out. Okay, so let's talk about the Maker portal and my developer instance here of the Power Platform. So I've created a developer instance, and Microsoft will give you one of these for free. You can't use it for production information. So if you're a part of a company that has production, development, test, prod type of systems, it might be better for you to be in there. But I'm just using this developer instance at the moment. I created this in the Maker portal and make.powerapps.com, and I've developed a few kind of small Power Apps out here. One for a carpet store inventory, one that I just call 365 Thoughts, which I'm going to demo here in a minute. Some auto service scheduler type of information. And so if I'm going to do a project for a client, I'm going to use their system. But this is where I do a lot of my, maybe I am seeing how something works. I am learning. I'm developing something new. Hey, once again, from the release planner, it says this is going to be out. Well, what does that mean? How can I use that? Well, I'll come out here to my developer instance and play around with it and kind of figure some of those things out on my own and try to be creative too and come up with new ideas. All right, so we have, I'll dive into how we can edit this first, and I'll show you the end product afterwards. So this is the app that I'm going to show today. And so I hit on that to edit, or that pencil icon. It's going to bring up the app and show us what it looks like and how we can change it if we need to. All right, so it's loading here, but we're going to get access to a lot of different things. We're going to get to see the app in a edit mode. We can come over here to the left navigation, and we can see all the different pieces of the forms and the views and everything that make up this app. So it's pretty simple. I just included accounts and contacts and activities from out of the box entities. And then I have a custom build entity. And I built this originally for the Canadian Summit. So it's a little bit Canadian focused, but I kind of think it's a funny scenario as well. So I like to continue using it. And we'll get into the kind of some of the funny stuff that's in there. Poke fun at the Canadians and some of their food that they have up there. So I created a custom all things Canadian section and Canadian foods in my in the Dataverse as a custom entity, a custom table. So we can come out here and we can move things around and we can start editing these forms and these views. And a view is just what we're looking at right now is a list of different records that are of a certain type. So these are all accounts. And we can change the filtering, the columns that are shown for the different views in the system. And then from a view, we can drill down on an individual record and see the form and some of the detail of that individual record. So I won't get into a lot of other things about being able to customize the system, but let's dive in and see what the end product looks like. So here is the end product. This is my model-driven app that is out there, and it's all logoed up for the Canadian Summit with their logo and everything. And as I mentioned before, we have our sections over here, but now we're not in an edit situation. We can see all the recent places that I've been in the system. So and I can quickly go back to any of those places I want to. If I want to go to Jim Glenn's contact record, I can quickly go to there for my recent items. I can also pin things that are in here. So you can see that I've pinned Canadian nachos. And so if I come down to my pinned items, those will always remain here. They will never, unless you unpin them, they'll never be removed. So you can just pin things that you want to get to over and over and over again. And they're nice and kept in that pinned area. And then we can come down here, we can see, we have accounts and we have contacts and we have activities. And if I click on these items in the left hand navigation, then we get to those lists. And we can also see that Copilot will pop up for us. And we can use Copilot in this system to ask questions about our data. And then I can minimize this if I want to get a bigger screen, or I can leave Copilot open and use it to, basically for querying or asking different things about the system in here. It'll give you some suggestions on what it thinks might be good questions. Or down below, you can just start, typing in your, once again, natural language, free-form text question that you have for the system and get some answers. All right, so let's look at an account a little more in depth. So in an account record, some of the things that we get with Power Apps that we don't have to build for ourselves are like this business process flow along the top. It'll remind us of some of the things, some of the basic, in this case, some of the basic information that we want to gather for an account when we're looking at address. And really, this is, it can be made required so that we're really forcing some behavior. But a lot of times I've seen this used as just kind of a reminder of what we're looking for in different processes along the way. Things like address. When we look at address, well, what are the basic things we want to gather? We'll put it up here at the top to remind people. Also seen this a lot in sales processes of we want to discover a opportunity. We want to close the opportunity. We want to do things in between of that sales process. And it really just kind of guides the sales process. And it's really nice. I love these business process flows for that reason, because it guides the user down the path that a company wants to go down and wants to guide their users down. And as we were talking about before, we had that list, but then we drilled down into the form, and in the form is all of the detailed information about this particular account. Things like name and phone number and website, the address once again, and then we have almost in every record in the system, we have a timeline that shows, okay, we got email and phone calls and the different things that have happened and when they've been modified in the system. It keeps track of the timeline of when different records have been touched and things that have been changed. And then, as I mentioned before, with the relationships on this account, Now we have two contacts that are related to this account. And these contacts are individuals that have a relationship back to this account. All right. So, contacts work a lot of the same way. I'll quickly go through this. If we drill down on one of the contacts, then we have information about at the contact level. And we can see also this contact relates back to this account. So this contact has a relationship to the Coho winery. But we'll see a little bit different information here. Not a lot different, but a little bit, where all of this information is focused on the contact, the individual level. And when we looked at the account, we were looking at more of a company level information. And once again, these are all out of the box. So this is stuff that I just kind of threw in my app, but I didn't have to build a lot of this. This was already pre-built, and I had the opportunity to change it, and I can add and remove columns and fields as needed. But you get a lot of this just with the Power Apps from Microsoft. Excuse me. And then we have these activities, and I mentioned these before, things like email and tasks and phone calls and things like that. So we can see all the activities, but then these are related also to accounts and contacts. And we can see when we drill into the accounts and contacts, what activities we have. We saw that a little bit in the timeline that I was showing, where we had, emails and phone calls and things on the at the account level. All right. So that's kind of a good overview, I think, of the system and how a model-driven app works. So let's talk about my custom entity, though, here for Canadian foods. I mean, once again, I have a lot of Canadian friends. I like to kind of have some fun with them. And I went up there to the Canadian Summit. Everybody loved this kind of some of the funny stuff that I did here, or attempted to. Hopefully, some people think it's a little bit humorous. But the different Canadian foods that we wanted to review and give opinions about. So this is kind of the focus of this is a food app. So we're out maybe tasting some different foods and giving our opinions and things about the food. So if I just click on a new Canadian foods record, we can input things, and I tried to put in a lot of different field types here. So this critic's name is a lookup to our contacts. So we can look up to all the different contacts in the system and choose one of them to be the name of our critic. We can have different food types. So this is a option set of different food types that are available. Things like maple syrup and back bacon and poutine and Hawaiian pizza and, some other, just different Canadian food types. This is the name of the food, and this is just a free-form text field where we can put in the name of the food. We have a price field, so we can, this is a currency field to put in the price of what what the food cost. And then we have a calculated total price field, which is adding a tax to the price of the food. We have a Wikipedia URL, and I'm going to go through this here in a second. Sorry with my example data, but I just kind of wanted to run through what's going on here in the forums and the different field types. But we have a Wikipedia URL, so it's going to bring up, based on the type of food that we select, the URL that's associated with it. We have just a whole number field for spice level. And then we have a toggle of, will we try this, yes or no? And then we have a larger text field for, putting in some identifiable ingredients that are in that food. So I can fill all that out. The top 3 items here are required. They have a red asterisk next to them. So we have to have a critic's name, a type of food, and the name of the food. The rest of these things are optional because there's no red asterisk next to it saying that it's required. I'm going to back out of this, though, and then look at our example here of Canadian nachos. So I don't know if anybody knows what poutine is here in Canada, but it's kind of a classic Canadian food that's based on having, French fries or, fries that are covered with gravy and cheese curds. So we have poutine that I've named Canadian nachos. They have a price of $12.50. And after we've added tax in there, which I think I just had 10%, which is, kind of low for tax, but that adds up to being $13.75. We have our Wikipedia page for poutine that we've populated here. And if I come over to the globe, I can click on the globe, and that'll launch our Wikipedia site that really describes, what is this food? What is it all about? Where was it originated? It's a cuisine from Quebec. Some of the history and stuff like that. I mean, you know how Wikipedia works, but it's kind of nice that we can just launch that direct from our Power App. And then on spice level, and I did limit this field. I didn't say this before. So if I put in 12 or even 121, it's going to say, you can only put in a spice level of 1 to 10. So it's limited in what can be entered here. So at a spice level of 4, we could say, will we try this again? Yes or no? And then identify all the ingredients that I said before, which is, it's fries with gravy and cheese curds on top of it. Some of the other things that I've built in here. So as I mentioned, if I go to maple syrup, now the maple syrup URL comes up and it'll launch the maple syrup Wikipedia site. But also, as I mentioned in the very beginning of this presentation, things about business rules. So, and the business rules are actually running this. So the business rule is seeing, hey, the food type has changed. Now I need to update the URL based on the food type that was selected. And that calculated field really isn't a business rule, but that's another thing that we have available to us, is having a calculated field that looks for a change in value. So let me show that a little bit instead of just talking about it. If I change the food price to 11, now, I got to save. And now after I've saved, the calculated field recalculates the total price for us. And so some of the other things that I have for business rules, obviously it's populating that Wikipedia site. But if I come out here to like Hawaiian pizza, I've put in an alert that says, hey, you're not Hawaiian, and that's nasty. So I don't know if anybody knows in other parts of the world, but you would think Hawaiian pizza originated in Hawaii, but it didn't. The Canadians came up with the idea of putting pineapple and ham on a pizza and calling it Hawaiian pizza. So I just put in that alert. I thought it was kind of a funny thing since the Canadians came up with Hawaiian pizza. So that's that. We'll go back to the poutine scenario. I can save and close this and come back here. And obviously I could have a lot of different Canadian foods, and I should probably build this out a little bit better so I have some better demo data. But that's pretty much it from kind of a simple model-driven app scenario. And a lot of the power that we can get from model-driven apps, a lot of the things that we can build there, and a lot of out-of-the-box features that Microsoft just gives us and allows us to build these apps pretty powerfully, pretty simply, and deploy them pretty quickly. It also really works with an agile scenario very well, where you can build part of it, kind of test it out and see what we think, and then make changes along the way, and maybe show the client, hey, this is what we built so far. What do you think? Should we change some things? Do you like the way this works? Do you like the way this business rule works, or the way this JavaScript changes things? And it's very, very nice for an agile type of experience. All right, so I think that is pretty much it. Let's go back to my demo, to my presentation here. And I'll scroll down. Sorry, that's a little bit annoying. Right. So here at the end, let's thank our sponsors once again. Once again, Scottish Summit doesn't really happen unless these sponsors are involved and giving their time and effort and money to make things happen for the summit. So thank you to all of our sponsors. Once again, I'm Scott Roller. I'm a solution architect. I'm an independent consultant with 365 Thoughts. And here are my ways to get a hold of me. So if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, that would be great. I love that. If you want to check out my blog, then that's great too. I'm trying to be more consistent with writing blog articles in there. And so check it out at 365thoughts.com. Connect with me on Twitter. I'm probably not as active on Twitter as I am with some of these other things, but I am out there and looking at stuff. And then send me an email if you want to. If you have any questions about this presentation or really anything else, send me an email, and I would love to respond and have a conversation with you. So that's it. Thank you for your time today. Hopefully, you do think that model driven apps are cool after listening to what I had to say, and hope to see you in the future. At a conference either in the United States or maybe in Europe, because I do love to come over there and visit with people in Europe. Thanks a lot. Talk to you soon. Bye.